chains shall he break. For the
This is Road Noise, episode number 63, a topic fit for a king. In this episode, it's all about Jesus, just in time for Christmas.
oppression shall cease.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Road Noise Life 1 Mile at a Time. I'm your host, Michael Blackston, and in this episode, we're going to talk about a topic that's fit for a king right here at Christmas time. I am absolutely excited. We're going to talk about Jesus in this Christmas episode, and it's episode 63 of Road Noise Life 1 Mile at a Time. If you're a first-time listener, you're going to be hearing something different than most people who have been first-time listeners in the podcast recently, and that's because there's some changes coming, being implemented right now with the podcast. And I called the show Road Noise because you could hear the sound of the road under the tires while I drove and did this podcast while I was driving. But I've since stopped that, and actually I've already recorded episode number 64 and edited it and have it ready to go. But I wanted to be able to get home where I had all my notes for the Christmas episode, so I recorded these out of sequence. And in this episode, I'm actually doing something my neighbors probably would think I'm kind of odd. I'm sitting outside of my house. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting in my car outside of the house to record this episode on, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, so it's officially December the 23rd. December the 23rd. I'm recording in my car for a couple of reasons. One, my wife has to get up in the morning, and like I said, it's 1 o'clock in the morning already, and I don't want to be waking her up, and there's stuff going on in the house. It's kind of hard. I don't have a studio set up in the house, so cars actually give you a really good opportunity to get some fairly decent sound quality. If you're a regular listener and you're wondering why I've decided to start doing this differently, I explained that in episode 64, so just be patient and wait till that episode comes out, and I'll tell you all about it at the beginning of that episode. So right now I'm holding my Shure SM58 in my hand, sitting in the driver's seat of my car, so it's kind of like it used to be. You are sitting in the passenger seat next to me. It's just we're stopped, and we're talking about it, and we're going to talk about Jesus in this episode because I am a devout Christian, and Christmas means so much more to me than the lights and the tinsel and Santa Claus and ho-ho-ho and all of that stuff, and that stuff's great. I enjoy it. I'm going to talk about that in this episode, but I wanted to give Jesus Christ the credit he deserves. I get sick of hearing people say, let's remember the reason for the season. For some reason, it's a cliched term, although it is absolutely correct, and I do like to remember the reason for the season. So I want to give Jesus the credit he deserves in this episode and do a little worship this episode by just talking about Jesus and my life, how I feel about Christmas and what Christmas means to me. And I hope that you'll find some value in this, and if it does nothing else, maybe give you some warm fuzzies, and just in time, you'll get an opportunity to maybe get into a little bit more of the Christmas spirit if you're not there already. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to do is actually read my favorite passage from the Bible about the birth of Jesus and the whole Christmas story. If you've ever watched the Peanuts, Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown, whatever the Charlie Brown Christmas thing, Linus, I believe it is, actually does this on the stage there. Luke chapter 2, and I'm going to read this from the King James Version. When I read this Christmas story, I like to hear it from the King James Version, the writing in that poetic Old English style. So here we go. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, every one into his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary his espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Saviour, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. That's my absolute favorite passage from the Bible about Christmas, and there are other ones, but not really about Christmas. There's I think Matthew has some telling about the birth of Jesus, but that's just kind of the one that we always read when I was a kid, and I just love that. It just, ever since I was a child, that just captured my imagination, and that whole scene, it's captured the world, and we see the nativity scenes in people's yards and in businesses, and people do the live nativity. My mom took my kids to see a live nativity tonight. I didn't get a chance to see what they thought. I know it was wonderful to me. My daughter had been with my mom for almost a week, and I'd been away out of town, and my daughter came up to me when she saw me for the first time after a week. She ran up to me with her arms held wide, and she jumped into my arms, and I lifted her up and hugged her, and the first thing she wanted to tell me was, Daddy, we saw baby Jesus in the manger. And that touched my heart because all of the Christmas, all of the stuff that Christmas has come to be, especially here in America, this innocent little child still sees the wonder of Jesus, and that's what she was excited about. She told me she sat in Santa's lap too, and that was great too, because she's not really been wanting to sit in Santa's lap. We've been trying to get her because we could get those, all wonderful pictures of the kids sitting in Santa's lap that all families have to have, and she has not been cooperative about that recently, but she said she did that. But the main thing she wanted to tell me was about getting to see the Christ child, and that touched me, unbelievably touched me. You just have no idea what that did to my spirit. And so I wanted to share Luke 2 with you and tell you about it, because Luke 2 has always been special to me, not just as a Christian, but it was special to me from before I really understood what being a Christian and the not only the birth of Christ, but the life of Christ and his sacrifice, what that was all about. Luke 2 from the Bible, and that story was always part of my childhood. My mom made sure that we read that as a family out loud every Christmas Eve before we went to bed. We were waiting for Santa Claus. We were kids, and we couldn't wait to get our presents and everything. I mean, like the kids do. But my mom made sure she made the main thing when it came to the real meaning of Christmas, and we always read that out loud. And I still have memories of my mom reading that in her beautiful voice, just reading that passionately to us, and we would take turns sometimes and do that. And now it's a family tradition in my family as well. And I have to admit, the last couple of years, we've forgotten to do it. But we're not going to forget that this year. My daughter is old enough to want to be a part of that now. My son is in his really sculpting years of his life as a preteen, and I really want to get that tradition back going in our family. So we're going to be reading Luke 2 aloud as a family in a couple of nights on Christmas Eve. And maybe that's a tradition. If you don't have it, maybe it's a tradition that you can start, because it puts everything into perspective, and it just kind of sets that tone. So I love that. Something else that I do as a tradition on Christmas, and I don't know how many people do this, and I pray all the time. Now, I'm not one of those people that thinks that the only way to pray is to say a certain set of words at a certain time. It's got to be on your knees right before you go to bed or right before you wake up. Those are great things. If you want to do that, have your prayer with God, that's fine. But I pray all the time. The prayer is always open for me. I can just go to God at any moment. And I do that all the time in my everyday life. But I set aside a special time on Christmas Eve every year to walk outside and spend about 10-15 minutes by myself just in communion with God. Some of that time is quiet time. Some of it is just me being introspective and praising and worshiping Him quietly. But I also have a prayer on Christmas Eve with God. I just walk outside. I take in the cool night air. Sometimes it's cold. Sometimes it's not so cold. Right now it's probably in the upper 40s, early or low 50s here in Elberton, Georgia at 1 o'clock in the morning. So you never know what the temperature is going to be like. But I just get out there and I feel the air. I take it in and I have a prayer. And I just thank God for all of the wonderful things that he's done, but mostly for loving us so much that he sent his one and only Son, and that we're celebrating the moment that Christ was born. We're celebrating that. A child who came to live and then die for the salvation of the entire world. That's what I believe. And that's a special moment with me. If you're a believer and you want to really dot the I's and cross the T's and put an exclamation point on your Christmas Eve, go out and spend some communion time, just you and God, just outside. Or it doesn't even have to be outside. You may live in Minnesota where it'll, freeze you solid if you try to walk outside at 1 o'clock in the morning or whenever you do it. But spend some communal time with God and just thank him. Get away from the lights and the tinsel and the tree and the presents and all of those wonderful things, and spend some honest, real time with God and say, thank you for your Son. Not just, let's celebrate it, no, come all ye faithful in silent night, holy night. Thank you, God, for loving us so much that you sent your Son. Now, I do want to address one thing that there's always somebody who says, well, we're doing this Christmas thing, but it really started out as a pagan holiday, and really, if you want to be accurate about it, it was probably more toward the spring that Jesus was born, and shepherds wouldn't have been out in the middle of the night watching their fields by night in the middle of the winter, I know that. Historically, I know that. But this is the time that we've set aside to celebrate it. And so I am all about me some Christmas. Personally, it would be 365 days of Christmas if it were up to me. It never gets old. I've got Christmas music. I've got a channel set on all of my listening devices. Santa's Radio, Christmas 365. I listen to it on the TuneIn app. And I can get Christmas music all year round, anytime, 24/7 that I want it. And you might hear me listening to Christmas music in July and August. I just love it. You may have heard me talk in the past about the fact that I love Bible apologetics. And so I wanted to make a list, or I didn't make a list, I got a list. I can't even remember where I got it off the internet, but it's a reputable source, and I got it off the internet. But here's a list of 12 things, Bible prophecies, that Jesus fulfilled. Now, if you really want to get into it, Jesus fulfilled a lot more Bible prophecies than that. But these are just the ones about his birth. Number 1, he was promised to come through the seed of Abraham. And you can get that prophecy in the Old Testament in Genesis 22:18, and the New Testament shows he fulfilled it in Matthew 1:1. Number 2, promised through Isaac. He was promised to come through Isaac. And the Old Testament prophecy is Genesis 21:12. New Testament fulfillment was Luke 3:34. It was prophesied that the Messiah would come out of the tribe of Judah. That was prophesied in Micah 5:2 and fulfilled in Luke 3:33. It's told about the fulfillment. Number 4, born in the family of Jesse. That's one of the ones you don't ever hear about really a whole lot unless you really get into the study of the Bible. And that Old Testament prophecy was from Isaiah 11:1, and the New Testament fulfillment is shown in Luke 3:32. He was born in the house of David, King David. The Old Testament prophecy there is Jeremiah 23, verses 5 and 6. New Testament fulfillment, Luke 3:31. He was born in Bethlehem. We all know that. Well, that was a really specific, there are a lot of Bible prophecies that people will argue that say, well, that could be anything. There are some that if you really get into it, you recognize it as a fulfilled prophecy, but you kind of have to dig. And then there are some that are so striking and obvious and just blatant prophecy and fulfillment and ways that one person could have no control over. For instance, being born in Bethlehem. It was prophesied in the Old Testament in Micah 5:2 that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. An unlikely area, a very small area. The New Testament fulfillment, obviously, Luke 2, 4 through 7. You heard that just a few minutes ago. He would be born of a virgin. The Old Testament prophecy of that is in Isaiah 7:14, New Testament fulfillment, Matthew 1:18. He'd be worshipped and presented gifts by kings. Old Testament prophecy, Psalm 72:10. New Testament fulfillment would be Matthew 2:11. Worshipped by shepherds. There's something specific. Worshipped by shepherds. If you were going to make a prophecy about a coming Messiah and you were trying to just pull the wool over somebody's eyes, you probably wouldn't be that specific. Worshipped by shepherds. Well, that was prophesied in the Old Testament, Psalm 72:9. New Testament fulfillment, obviously, Luke 2, verse 9. Weeping for the children. Now, here's one that a lot of people don't think about when you're talking about the birth of Jesus. And really this took place, the fulfillment took place about 2 years later. But the Old Testament prophecy is in Jeremiah 31:15, and it talks about a prophecy of how the women will be crying for their children and they'll find no peace. And it talks specifically about things that are going to happen. Well, New Testament fulfillment for that is Matthew 2:16, and it talks about where, and the timeline ends up being about 2 years after the birth of Jesus, but it gets to Herod, and Herod doesn't want anybody to be king over him, so he makes proclamation that all male children 2 years and younger are to be killed, just destroyed, to make sure that the Messiah doesn't happen, and or isn't born. Then that's his plan. And the Bible says, the obviously there would be no peace. The mothers would be crying for their children. I'd love for you to get into that. That's some interesting stuff and really, frankly, brutal stuff about the birth of Christ that people don't talk about because it's, it's not happy and joyful. Number 11, flight to Egypt was prophesied. Old Testament prophecy in Hosea 11:1 says that the Messiah will be taken to Egypt. He'll have to flee to Egypt. New Testament fulfillment tells you in Matthew 2:13 and 14 how because Herod had this proclamation about killing all the boys 2 years and younger, that the family of Joseph, including Jesus, needed to go into Egypt to flee that from happening. And they did that. So they fled to Egypt just as it was prophesied. And then number 12, he will be called Lord. And I cropped this out. I have this on my iPad, and I cropped this out. I can't tell you where the Bible passages are without stopping and what I'm doing. But you can see how Jesus' birth was prophesied and then fulfilled in all of these places. What a wonderful time of the year to celebrate the birth of a king. I'm going to stop and take a minute now, since I've gone through all of this information about biblical stuff and the birth of Jesus and all that, and how important it is to me. A few years ago, one of the best gifts I ever gave my mom was a CD of me singing some of her favorite Christmas music, and I wanted to share a couple of those songs with you. You've heard me talk in this podcast, if you've listened before, that I'm a performer and a singer, and I don't like to share a lot of my music and stuff in here because I don't want to seem arrogant or anything like that, or I don't want it to seem like I'm trying to just use this podcast as a vehicle to show off my voice or anything like that. But I thought this would be an opportunity for me to share some of my own heart and music and soul with you through this. And this is a gift that I gave to my mom in the form of a Christmas CD. And here I'm going to play a couple of songs in this episode from that CD. This is Mary Did You Know? And this is me singing it. And please forgive me, I'm not the best audio engineer as far as music goes, but I thought this was a halfway decent version. I didn't get an opportunity to do a million different takes. This was all done in one take. Every song on this is all one take, no editing, so it is what it is. But I hope you enjoy Mary Did You Know?
Mary, did you know that your baby boy will someday walk on water? Mary, did you know that your baby boy will save our sons and daughters? Did you know that your baby boy has come to make you new? The shepherds trot when you kiss your little baby. You kiss the face of God. Oh, Mary, did you know? The blind will see, the deaf will hear, the dead will live again. The lame will leap, the dumb will speak, the praises of the Lamb. Mary, did you know your baby boy is Lord of all creation? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would one day rule the nations? Did you know your baby boy is heaven's perfect lamb? This sleeping child you're holding is the great I am. Mary, did you know?
That's Mary Did You Know, and it's one of my all-time favorite songs. So many different people have done a version of Mary Did You Know, but my mom loves that, and I wanted to do one for her. So what are some of my favorite things about Christmas? I mean, just not only, obviously, the worship of Christ and the birth of the Christ child, but what are some of my things about the Christmas season that I just absolutely love? Well, I love the lights. When I start seeing people putting up their Christmas lights, sometimes it's even if it's before January, I love it. My wife can't stand it. She doesn't want Christmas until Thanksgiving Day. She's okay with people starting to put Christmas stuff up. But before that, she doesn't want to hear it, doesn't want to see it. She likes Christmas, but she just wants it in its place. She and I are complete polar opposites when it comes to the whole Christmas 365 days a year. She wants it just in its little pocket, and that's all she wants it. Me, you could put up your lights and leave them up all year long, Christmassy. I would love it. I would have a Christmas tree up all year long and just continue to decorate it for the different seasons of the year, but she will not have that, and that's not somewhere we're going to go with it. But I love the lights. And talking about my wife and the way she is about Christmas, it's funny. I usually poke a little bit of fun at her about being a Grinch or being a Scrooge, and she's not. She's not at all. She's just very strict about not wanting to hear or see anything before Thanksgiving about Christmas. So, one year I wrote a poem that I presented for my entire family in the style of Dr. Seuss, and it was about everybody had a Seussical kind of name. Everybody was their name, but then we put Lou Who behind it. You know, the How the Grinch Stole Christmas has Cindy Lou Who. Well, everybody in this was a Lou Who. So I was Michael Lou Who. My wife Kayla was Kayla Lou Who. My mom was Brenda Lou Who. So I did all this, and this was years and years ago. I think my son may have been born, but he was he was born, because I remember writing it, and I actually illustrated this little book and did a whole big project with it. So I think he was either born or about to be born. There was one little segment I put in it about my wife. And, what was it I said? Because Kayla loves to quote this. Away put your carols, the Yuletide's not come, else you'll learn where to stick that small boy in his drum. My wife loves that. And I have to redo that for some personal reasons. I need to kind of go back and revisit that and redo it. But anyway, that's my wife. She's a sweetheart, but she wants Christmas in its place. I'll tell you that much. Eggnog. I love me some eggnog. I've loved that since I was a kid. My mom used to give us a little bit of eggnog. Now, not alcoholic. I know, originally and kind of traditionally alcohol is involved with eggnog when you make it homemade sometimes. But I'm talking about the store-bought stuff, and I never thought I would like it because I'm not a fan of eggs. But the first time I had eggnog, I fell in love with it. Doesn't taste anything like eggs, and I love it. Now, I gave some to my son the other day. He was on a trip with me, and I got a thing of it, and he said, I've never tried that. So I put it in a little cup for him, and he couldn't stand it. That's fine. More for me and more for my wife. Now, that's one thing my wife would drink all year long, Christmassy. In fact, she might change her whole tune on Christmas if it meant she could have Christmas eggnog all year round. She loves eggnog. We love eggnog. I love the red and green peanut M&Ms. I'm not a huge M&M fan except at Christmas time, and I don't go crazy with them, but there are just a couple of little parties I like to go to, especially Christmas Eve with my family. I like there to be peanut M&Ms, the red and green ones, and it must have been something in my childhood. There's a smell and a taste that just comes from having those at that time that just takes me back to my childhood, and there must have been a day or a specific celebration that those were a part of that have made me think like that. But since then, red and green peanut M&Ms are a part of Christmas Eve to me. And having those kind of gets me in that whole spirit. I'm in the spirit anyway, but it just transports me to a place that I need to be on Christmas Eve. So I always need to have some peanut M&Ms, at least a handful of them, the red and green ones on Christmas Eve. Not like the red and green ones really taste any different, or not that they taste any different than the other ones, but you know how it is. It's Christmas Eve. They got to be red and green. I love me some Christmas music. I've already told you that I've got the place on all of my listening devices all ready to go. All I got to do at the push of the button is hear Christmas music all year round. Well, it is crazy time with Christmas music this time of the year. For me, I'm listening to Christmas music, singing Christmas music, one right after the other. All of my earworms are Christmas songs. So I love me some Christmas music. The family gathering. I love parties, and I love gathering with my family and fellowshipping and just laughing. I've told my mom several times. My mom will say just about every year right after Christmas, she'll say, next year we're not doing as much as we did. I went way too overboard. I've spent too much money, and nobody needs all that stuff. Y'all don't need to do that. And I agree. If it were up to me, the children would get gifts, but the adults would not. We wouldn't share gifts with each other. We wouldn't draw names. We would just fellowship. We'd have a good time. We'd laugh. We'd cry. We'd sing. We'd just be overjoyed with each other, and that's all the gift I would ever need. And it never ends up that way. In fact, I've always told my mom when she would make that statement is, I completely agree with you, and in fact, if you decide you want to buy presents and spend all that money, give them to somebody that needs it. Give it to an unfortunate family. Some child out there is not having Christmas, and it'd be great if instead of giving me all of these gifts, give me one little small gift if you feel like you need to, and then put all of that other effort into a Merry Christmas for somebody who's less fortunate. And I'm a big believer in that. Although I haven't practiced that preaching yet, and I'm hoping to be able to be home more next year so that I can put a little more into put my mind a little more into helping out in ways that will help somebody that's less fortunate. And I love giving. It's just, I could receive nothing. I don't have to get anything for Christmas. It's not important for me to unwrap anything, but I love to give. I love to try to see if I can find something that will be really meaningful to people. I'm not a fan of giving gift cards, but I end up giving a lot of gift cards simply because I don't know what to do for people. My mom, my dad, they have everything. So I end up having to make something for them a lot of times. I'll try to find something to make, and that's what they love. They both will tell me, I love you to make something for me. The only problem with that is lately I've been so busy, I haven't been able to set aside the time to make something. This past year, I am still 2 to 3 weeks booked in advance. And I'm usually have been twiddling my thumbs for a couple of weeks right before Christmas because I get all of my work done, and in the granite industry, people want to wait till after the first of the year to start getting the gears turning again. And in Elberton, Georgia, we shut down right before Christmas and won't open back up, at least the granite industry portion of Elberton, until after New Year's. I mean, it shuts down completely. And so I've usually got that time. Well, this year, I'm not. I've been working full weeks right up to Christmas. I'm going to be going to Alabama the 27th of December and working almost a full week then. And then the very next week, I'm going right back. I can't even remember where I'm going, but the first week of January, I'm going to be right back doing a lot of driving and a lot of working. And it's a blessing, but I don't have a lot of time to make stuff. And so I'm hoping next year that some of that will settle down, that I will have been able to move a lot of that work more toward Elberton where I live, and I'll be able to stay home and enjoy the times coming up to Christmas more with my family and having a little more time to give of myself instead of having to just go out to Walmart, pick out a card, and say, here's a card with a bow on it. Go buy yourself something. So that's my Christmas episode. Let me say something to those who may listen to this episode who don't have the opportunity to have the moments like I'm talking about. Maybe you're alone. Maybe you're not necessarily alone, but your family isn't nearby. There's a whole lot of reasons a lot of people kind of really get down and low this time of the year. And I want to say, first of all, that I have you in my prayers. I don't know who you are individually, but I believe in a God that's so big that I can say a blanket prayer for all of you. And I hope that in those times when you're feeling low or feeling down, you can look up. You can have a communion with God and say, I'm lonely, but God, you sent your Son. And right now, that's what's important, that we're celebrating the birth of our Savior. Thank you so much to those of you who are regular listeners to the show. Welcome to those who are new listeners to the show. I don't know how long Road Noise is going to continue to go. I'm hoping it'll go for a long time. We're going to see what happens in the next year. I've got some big plans, and if you're interested in knowing what's coming up and what plans I've got for my life and for this podcast, then listen to episode 64, because I go into all of that. Like I said before, I've already got it recorded. I recorded these out of sequence. I've already got it recorded. I'll explain in that episode from the beginning that all about why the audio is different now and going to be getting even better coming up in 2017. I've been blessed, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to thank and praise God for that, and I want you to be a part of my blessing, and I want you to be a part of my life. So if you would like to share something about your Christmas traditions, your Christmas stories, whatever they may be, I'd love you to get in touch with me, and here's the way you can do it. By the way, I'm not going to give a positive review at the end of this episode simply because it's late, and I've got to now turn around and edit this and do all of the show notes and get the concept art and everything up, or the cover art and everything up and ready to go and released now so that it'll be ready when everybody wakes up on Friday morning, because that's the way I promise it. So I'm not going to give you a positive review. But anyway, if you'd like to get in touch with me, here's how you do it. You can get in touch with me via email at feedback@michaelblackston.com. That's feedback@michaelblackston.com. You can also call the voicemail line at 706-408-7456. That's 706-408-7456. Or go straight to the website at roadnoisepodcast.com. That's roadnoisepodcast.com, and you can find share buttons for all of your favorite social media outlets. You can find the iTunes button if you'd like to subscribe, and I love to ask you to subscribe, but also tell your friends and family about the Road Noise Podcast. If you find this content interesting and valuable, other people will as well. So I ask you to share it with them. And until the next episode, thank you so much for being a part of my life. I'm Michael Blackston, your host for Road Noise, and together we're learning to live life 1 mile at a time. As we're leaving out, I'm going to leave you with my version of Oh Holy Night.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. 'tis the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices. Oh, night divine, oh, night when Christ was born. Oh, night divine, oh, night divine. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus raise we, let all within us praise his holy